like the combination of fear of failure and imposter syndrome of feeling like you don't know enough, and so you never try to put yourself out there, and so you just keep doing courses, keep saying like I need to learn more. And to me it's like a weird like way to procrastinate and avoid confronting your fear of rejection. And so you just need to get out there and like start failing, and then create that feedback loop that we talked about. Ask, why did I not get hired? What was the problem? And then focus on fixing that one problem.
Welcome to episode 13 of Sharing Developer Stories, hosted by Tech Rally. Today's guest is Paul, a software engineer who also has a YouTube channel called Coding After 30. I had such a great conversation with him about breaking into tech. Hope you enjoy. Hey everyone, welcome to the Sharing Developer Stories hosted by Tech Rally. Today, my guest is my YouTube rival. We're competing for subscribers all the time. And if you're already subscribed to his channel, make sure to unsubscribe. No, I'm just kidding. We have a really awesome guest. He is a software engineer and also has a YouTube channel called Coding After 30. Paul, how are you doing?
Pretty good. Hey, good to be on. Finally get an invite. No, just kidding. Listen, I love your channel, and it's kind of cool. Like I like this fake rivalry we got going, because I think that's how you get ahead. But you do make some awesome content, and everybody who watches your channel knows that. So I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. But you know what? Today is all about you.
Sounds
So
good.
we're gonna
Sounds
be
good.
talking about only you today.
All right, I'm going to try
No,
my
we could
best.
definitely bounce off some ideas. But for people that might not know who you are, like, can you kind of give us a little intro about yourself?
Yeah, so for most of my life, I've been involved in like martial arts, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, MMA. I ran a business for as long as I could remember. Basically, that's been most of my professional experience. And what started to happen, I started getting injured. I tore my ACL, and I realized that, I can't keep this going forever. And I decided that I need to develop a skill that will be in demand and allow me to work as I keep getting older without focusing on physical labor. And so like around like 30, I got this idea, well, let me start learning to code. I didn't start learning it seriously until like I was 35, and my journey's been like kind of shaky at best, just because I had a pretty decent gig. Like my job was nice, so I never had an incentive to switch right away. So I kind of meandered my way through learning to code. And so now I'm like 40, and I am working as a software engineer. I've been working for about a year and a half, and then prior to that, I do have some freelancing and WordPress experience. But that's basically in a nutshell. I basically some dude who switched careers in his late 30s to becoming a software engineer, and that's been a difficult switch. I know there's a lot of like different opinions, like, oh, you could do it in 3 months, you could do it in whatever. And I think like if you don't have a good plan, um, and you're trying to learn everything and you kind of meandering your way, it could take years. So I'm glad that I finally made it here. But
R-
that's basically it.
Right. And I mean, always kudos to you for being able to make that transition because I think a lot of people are trying to transition into tech, but to your point, if you don't have the right structure or the right
Yeah.
guidance, yeah, some people can do it in 3 months, but some people it'll take 10 years, 12 years. Who knows how long it'll
Yeah.
take? So, um, I know you said you kind of decided to do a career switch, but how did you even discover that coding could be something that you can actually do? And where did you
Yeah,
get that
so this
confidence
is
to do it?
very interesting. So I was always into like science type of things. Like as a kid, I really liked doing experiments. And my parents, when I was 11 years old, they put me at a summer camp where we did coding. And it was back in the day. We used Apple IIe computers. I don't even know if you know what those are, you youngins over here. And I really enjoyed it, really liked it. And so like that was something that I always liked. But as I was growing up, being involved in sports and martial arts, that was just slightly like a tighter pull on me. So I went into that direction. And while I was doing martial arts, time to time, like, for my local business, I had to set up a WordPress website. So I was like, hey, let me learn a little bit PHP, let me learn a little bit HTML. So I started kind of getting into it like that. And then till like my like mid 30s, when I was like, bro, you're so injured, you got to figure something out. So I started taking it seriously. But the love has always been there. And that's where I kind of realized I went wrong in giving people advice, is that I didn't realize that this is something I kind of liked forever, like always. And I didn't realize that it takes a certain individual to be able to learn to code and do programming. And I realized if you don't like it, it's very hard to be successful at it. I mean, you could do it for the money, like, of course, but there's so much struggle that goes along with learning to code and struggling through problems, is that you really have to enjoy some part of it. Maybe it's not the work, but you have to enjoy the problem solving of it, to be able to stick with it long term. So like I always liked it, and I just never realized it, and I took it for granted. But yeah, that's basically how I got into it. It was like my next natural thing to do if I wasn't going to do like martial arts.
Right. And I talking to a lot of different people, they all have different reasons, they all have different techniques on how they learn to code, which is what I love. But I think what I noticed from your story is that you love the science behind anything. So like in my opinion, I think jujitsu is a science of its
Yeah,
own.
yeah,
Every type of scenario that you're in, you have to readjust to that specific condition, whether you're on top, on the bottom, on the
right.
side, and you kind of have to like there's no one playbook fits all, right? Like if you're sitting on the side position, then you could always guarantee that this will work. No,
Yeah,
not the case, right?
yeah,
And just
100%.
like coding, I think there is this mentality where everyone's just looking for, yeah, just give me the answer. Is there only one clear answer on how to do this? Like, well, no, I mean, there is one way to do it. There's another way to do it. There's a different way to do it. And I feel that your experience in jujitsu and being an instructor and kind of being able to analyze different situations is kind of similar to coding, which I just realized at this moment. What do you
Yeah,
think
yeah,
about
yeah. You actually hit it right, like the nail on the head. That's exactly it. The same type of like reason that people are attracted to jujitsu is the same type of reason why people are attracted to coding. And I actually, when I used to run my martial arts school, we had a lot of software engineers who were really into jujitsu. And not only were they really, really into jujitsu, they were actually really, really good. And it's because of this idea of being able to analyze problems, break them down, make sense of them, and have a very structured approach how to solve them and how to approach them. Because you'll have like same thing as in coding, you might have someone in jujitsu that will just try whatever and not have any structure to their learning. Just like in coding, someone like let's say trying to learn 10 different programming languages at once, where there could be like one guy who'll be like, you know what, I'm just going to focus on this one area of my
it? Hmm.
jujitsu strategy and work on that. Kind of like one person dedicating their time to learning React with JavaScript, whatever it is, and then really focusing on it, and then paying attention to when things go wrong, and then working one step at a time, trying to fix the problem. And it's funny that you say this because, like in jujitsu, that made sense to me. But then when I started learning to code early on, I didn't follow any of the jujitsu principles. And then finally, I was like, what are you doing? You're like a meandering cat in like a barn trying to figure things out. And so I was like, you know what? I got to bring my jujitsu to my programming. And that's when things started to make sense and click. But I think there's definitely that
Yeah.
problem solving aspect of it in both.
Yeah. Imagine like if you're always grappling and you always just do an arm bar, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
like the same concept as in JavaScript. You're always just using a for each function for anything that you try to solve.
Yeah.
And then it's like, no, I have to do this because this is my specialty. No, it just sounds ridiculous that you're trying to solve everything through like a for each when you could, there are
Yeah.
like string functions that could do this exact same thing.
Right, right, yeah, and that is like, but the armbar is like a good example because there's a thousand different ways to do an armbar, and it's like a
Sure.
thousand ways to do something like so. Maybe you're using like something else, but it the idea with like programming for me, like when things started to click, is to try to do less more
Mhm.
often than try to do more things less times. And so this idea of trying to do everything well is tough. And I committed to learning JavaScript, and that's when I finally started making sense of programming. And now, like anybody who knows language, don't even have to master it like well enough. You could pick up any programming book and make sense of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's just what you learn by learning the basics. And to give like an example, my current role, I had to learn C sharp, which not that difficult going from JavaScript because it's a C based language. And so like if you know programming, you just kind of have to learn the syntax and how to work with that particular framework, like ASP.NET, whatever. And you could learn it once you have the foundation. And then I just currently started a new role. And unfortunately, like I love my new role. I'm thankful that I have it, but they do Python. I hate Django. I don't want to do anything, but that's what their back end is. And so even though I'm not going to be working most of the time on the back end, I have to be familiar with it. So I have to learn some Python. But then again, knowing basic, principles that you developed, through one language, it carries over, and
Right.
so it's super important for people to understand that and try to stay on track with learning one thing first to a point where you're competent with it, and then try to branch out to what you want to do.
So I want to ask you actually, because you did mention your coding journey. You went through a lot of different failures or just maybe some mistakes you made along the way. What were those mistakes?
So the biggest mistake, like I alluded, is trying to learn everything at once. So I started learning to code so long ago that I started when Ruby was actually popular, like with the Rails. And then by the time like I started making sense of it, like it was too late. But no, but I tried C sharp, C++, Python, Ruby, whatever you name it. I tried it, and I never really got deep enough in any of those languages to make sense. So that was my biggest mistake because I wasted a lot of time because every time you switch tasks, there's a price you pay, and because you got to get situated, you got to get started again. And so, don't make that mistake. Anybody that's watching, pick one language, stick with it until you know it well enough. Don't jump around left and right until you know it. So that's the biggest mistake I would say. In terms of like learning, it's you need to be part of like you a community. Like you have to have a friend or somebody that you know who did it, the thing that you want to achieve, they accomplished it, just so you could have like a course correction check, because it's very easy to get lost, and it's very easy kind of, you know, go off track and start learning things that are not going to help you get a job. So having like someone you could talk to, like you or somebody who made it as a developer, or I have a friend Jeff that I talk to all the time, who every time I start doing something, he's like, no, 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 don't do that because that's not what people are looking for right now in the field. Make sure you stick to this one path. So kind of having course correction from like a friend, from a community like yours, or anybody that you look up to who already accomplished the goal that you want. And I would say those are the two things that are super important to keep in mind when you're going through this journey.
Yeah, I do agree with that a lot. And for me, my recommendation generally is sticking with JavaScript. Everyone has their own preference, but at the end of the day, I think the most important thing is the sticking with one language and not trying to do too much, because the context switching is pretty insane. And
Yes.
even
Yeah.
context switching within JavaScript can be insane when you're going from vanilla to React. So on
Oh my
top of
God.
exactly, so on top of just learning multiple languages, which kind of doesn't make sense because ultimately at the end of the day, you're just trying to build software. So it's just kind of crazy how like you can kind of fall into this rabbit hole of like doing a bunch of different coding languages and not realizing that you haven't gotten anything done. And then I do completely agree with the accountability part where I self-taught programmers, I feel for them a lot because I don't think they realize how important it is to have a backing of a community or people that you can talk to about your journey. Otherwise, when you feel very, very unmotivated that day, you might say, "Oh, it's only one day." And then it's 2 days, then 4 days, then 8 days, and then all of it. The next thing you know, it could be 6 months to a year that you haven't coded. So, definitely the accountability partner is super important as well. So once you decided that JavaScript was going to be your thing, at what point did you go from JavaScript is my thing to I was able to get my first job as a software engineer? Like what was the time frame like, and what did you do?
It was literally, yeah, 4 years at least. It was like very frustrating too. And one of the reasons why, like, I think it took me so long is because I still had my job, which like was comfortable. I was actually making more money at the time than I'm making now. And so there was never like this incentive to switch. I was kind of like, oh, I'm gonna do it. And I think it's important to kind of like when you do commit to something, go full in and immerse yourself in the idea. But the when I fell in love with JavaScript, and it was also because my friend told me, he's like, listen, there's all these things out there, and React was just starting to be popular. And he's like, look, there's not that many developers that have 10 years of React experience because it hasn't been around that long. So this is a great way to position yourself and enter the field because you're going to be almost on the same level playing field as other developers who are just learning React. And so that's kind of what I committed. My journey getting there though was difficult because at the time I lived in Connecticut, and um, like every place I applied to, like nobody wanted to hire me because I had zero professional experience as a
Mm,
programmer, and all they saw was like, oh, you have a martial arts school, that like that's what you had, and like how are we going to take a chance on you? And so at that moment, I decided, I'm like, look, and this is kind of like where being a little bit entrepreneurial helps, because you want to try to give yourself the best chance you can. So I kind of play this game with myself where I'm like, you know what? I'm going to start a side business, being a WordPress developer, and I'm going to create websites, like zero coding, like basic HTML and CSS. And I'm going to find a bunch of businesses in my local areas that don't have a website. I'm going to do that. And I'm going to see if I could make some money doing that. But at the same time, I'm going to continue on my path on JavaScript and React. And then I'm going to continue to apply to companies. And then the game I was playing is like, what's going to happen first? Am I going to succeed in my WordPress business, or am I going to get hired? And so I did those kind of unilaterally. And what happened, I ended up moving to Texas. And the reason I moved here is just because a lot more opportunity, based on, you know, just the way Texas is to Connecticut. I tried to like, partly like maybe find job in New York, but the cost of living in New York and the hassle of doing all that stuff, it's rough. It's tough. You know what I mean? And so I was like, you know what? Austin, cost of living is a little bit less, but they paid pretty much the same, and it's nice. There's no snow here, and so when I got here, I was finally able to get an interview and do well enough to get hired, and that happened in the span of like 4 years. Um, that's like the journey in a nutshell. And the only reason why I think I got hired, and this is something I gripe about, not gripe about, but I talk about, this idea of networking, making friends is super important,
Right.
because if you work at a company, and you go to the manager, you go like, listen, I have a friend named Paul. Here's his resume. He's a nice guy. I've seen what he does. I think he will be a perfect fit for you. That already puts me like 40, 50% ahead of other candidates that did not have that introduction. And so that's how I got an interview, is through an introduction like that. And I did well enough at the interview that the guy's like, okay, you're hired.
Right.
And then he told me I had to learn C sharp. And I was like, okay. But yeah, that's kind of like the journey. There's a
Right.
lot of struggle in between,
A
but
lot of
it's
struggle in
tough to
between.
talk about 4 years in like five
Yeah,
minutes, but just the
exactly.
general idea.
No, I think that's a good story, and I think a lot of people underestimate the power of networking, and because if there's someone that you know that can vouch for you, and like you said, put you in front of the line, yeah, they're not gonna guarantee you that you're gonna get the
Yeah,
job. You still have to do well on the interview, but at least you're able to get a little bit ahead of all the pile of resumes that an employer
yeah,
might be looking at. And at that point, it really is just up to you to deliver. So I think a lot of people, there are a lot of people that are qualified or technically qualified to do the position, but they're just not using the right techniques to
yeah,
kind of get noticed by employers. And I get so shocked when these self-taught developers, they don't even have a LinkedIn. They're not being active on social media. And when I say social media, I mean social media in the context of LinkedIn or
yeah,
Twitter, because I believe, in my opinion, a lot of developers are on Twitter and a lot of recruiters are on LinkedIn. And
yeah,
kind of get the best of both, where you have to get noticed by recruiters and you can get noticed by developers and Twitter through, and then hopefully they could be your referrals. But ultimately, the recruiters are the ones that are always going to be the ones looking for software developers, right? Not just developers looking for other developers. And I think that's another thing that I would like to emphasize, for anyone that's like looking for a job, is also reach out to recruiters. They're just as important as potentially getting a referral from a developer you just first met. So, did
yeah.
you do any type of like recruiting or anything like that?
Not. I just recently started because I'm looking to switch jobs. So then I got this job that I currently have, that I've been there for like 3 weeks now. It's a contract role,
Hmm.
which is nice. I was gonna say, in terms, yeah, like network is super important. I had a point, I just forgot what it was, but it's like, oh yeah, here it is. That's why I kind of like your channel a lot, because you talk more about this, like how to get a job, what like steps you have to take. Because, in my opinion, coding and then getting a job are two different skills. You spend time learning the way you're gonna do things at work, but then you got to spend time on how to get the job, which is LinkedIn, which is your resume, which is practicing your interview questions, talking to recruiters, knowing where to find them, how to do it is super important. And like one example is, my resume that I had before was perfect for any other job, but it looked terrible for, um, software engineering, just because the format it was in. And what's interesting, as a person, my skills were all the same. What changed was the way I formatted my resume. My previous resume was getting me ghosted by everybody. They're like, this guy doesn't know what he's like, amateur, just based on a piece of paper, even though I could do the work. And
Right.
then my new resume actually looks slightly better than I am as a developer. So it's like that's such a, I mean, like for emphasis, for a fact, why you guys should have a good resume and follow like these proper steps to get the job is like super important. And that's kind of why I think like there's certain channels where they just do tutorials are important when you're learning, and then there's channels like yours are important when you're actually trying to get the job. And like one thing I'm going to say, and I know you talked about it before, is this idea of kind of having a feedback loop when you're interviewing, when something happens. If you don't get the job, like obviously they don't owe you an answer, but ask, why did I not get this job? What did I do wrong? What could I do better? You need that feedback so you could self like course correct. Don't make assumptions, because you could assume the wrong thing and you could never get to the thing that you need to fix to be able to change it up and get into the field.
Right. And you brought up a lot of great points, and one of the things I'll have to admit on my own is my resume is pretty garbage. And but the thing is, I think I'm in a privileged state where I do have the experience already, so the
Yeah,
resume is less important. But this is kind of what I was trying to allude to, where it's, yeah, you can ask help from other developers on how do I get a first job, but those developers might be already experienced, and so they might be giving
I
you
have a
really,
I
really
have a
bad
story
advice.
about that. Yeah,
They're coming from the perspective of someone that already has years of experience, and the resume may not be that
it
important to
doesn't matter.
them,
Yeah, for them,
to a
no.
recruiter or a hiring
It's like,
manager.
where'd you
But
work last? Facebook. What do you try to get a job at? Google. All right,
yeah, no, I mean
sounds good.
exactly. Like if you have already the 5 years of experience, the resume is not as important because they already know that you've worked at a company being a professional software developer for 5 years.
Yeah,
But what I love about your channel and how you actually really deep dive into this resume section, because I actually saw your whole like live stream about it. And man, your resume, it looked really nice. You had
well,
all your
thank you,
skills on the
thank you.
left side, and then
Took
you
me
had the
forever
nice,
to figure that out. I'm just
yeah,
not gonna lie to you.
it looks so simple, but it's so efficient in a
Yeah,
way that it's very clear to a normal person, not just a software developer, what
yeah,
your capable skills are, where you've worked, and all of that. So I think that's something that I take a lot of lessons watching your channel is, yeah, I do more of the like getting that feedback loop, how to like approach the interviews. But I also need to get better at what you're doing in a sense that there is some like technical aspects of making sure your resume is presentable, and whatnot. So definitely, I feel like we're tackling the same thing, but maybe with our powers combined, we can form
yeah.
like Captain Planet
Right, right, right,
coding.
exactly, exactly. What, right, right. But like, what it's funny, like what you say, because like you're talking about things from like what you should be doing in terms of like the overview and giving that high level advice, because you're working from the assumption you're working with people that have a portfolio, they
Mhm,
have a resume, and they just need to fine tune stuff. Where for me, like I'm in the trenches still trying to do this, and so like
mhm,
when I hear your advice, I convert it to what do I need to do tactically? Like, what's the tactic that I need to apply?
mhm,
Okay, my resume is not working. And I kind of get that from like when you do a video about resumes, like I'm like, oh, resume is important. So then I'll start asking, how do I make my resume better?
right,
You know what I mean?
right.
And so, like, I think this idea of having your perspective and then the perspective of someone like me who's in the trenches and combining them together is very important, because what you just mentioned is a total fact. I have a friend, Vadim. He actually lives in the city. He just recently moved out of Manhattan, though. But he worked in software forever. He's like he's managed teams. He got now he works at Shopify, and this is his advice. Is like, Paul, yeah, it's easy. Data structures. It'll just take you a day. Just look a bunch of trees. You'll be able to get it. He went to like a phenomenal college, graduated with a computer science degree, has photographic memory, by the way. And he's like telling me this advice, like, yeah, yeah, just sit for like a weekend and you'll get it. It's easy. Like lead code, not a problem, bro. And then it's like, oh, for like your resume, it'll be fine. It's like it's just like. And then he's telling me like when you go to an interview, just ask for 150K. Not a problem. I'm like, you're giving me advice. Do you even know who you're talking to? You're like you're like right there. Like I can't even see you how high you are. So like I don't want to be like impolite to him, but I don't listen to anything he says because his advice he means well, but it's not going to help me get to where I'm going. You know?
Exactly. And in some regards, computer science, 5 or 6 years or 10 years of experience, photogenic memory, these are
Yeah.
all like not the common nature of it,
No,
of coding,
no,
right?
not at
It's
all.
an anomaly
Yeah,
for
he's
all
one
I
of
know,
those.
if I could say
Yeah,
that word.
yeah,
But
and
there,
yeah, he's one of those dudes that he stands out in his group of other good developers. You know what I mean? He's like
yeah.
it's like the 1%, and I'm like, dude, like listen, like don't give me advice. Like just like talk about your weekend. I'll go to Tacarelli for advice. Something like because I understand my struggle. Um,
But yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about the resume and the importance of structuring it pretty well, and I highly recommend you to watch Paul's video on that because it's really, really good. But after you do the resume, maybe you've done the LinkedIn. I think the next transition is that portfolio project. How many do you how many projects do you think a person should have before they start applying? Is it one,
yeah,
five,
yeah.
10? What is that
I think it
mental
depends on the
number?
size and the complexity, but I say
Hmm.
like 3 to 5 like projects. Now, before I talk about the projects, so what I would say is, before you have a resume, before you start doing your algorithms, before you start doing this other stuff, I think you need to, number one, learn the thing that you're learning. Number two, build your portfolio so you're not showing up with a good resume and empty portfolio, and so like I do that. I would recommend people do that first. Definitely get bare minimum 2 projects. And I like what Coder Foundries say when they talk about the project to rule them all. And it's not the project in itself; it's the idea that they basically want to see you be able to create something which has authentication and CRUD applicate like CRUD functionality that you're able to work with a database or some sort of backend API. You don't even have to make the backend yourself, depending like what jobs you're applying to. But you need to understand that at a high level and at least be able to work with it from the front end perspective, and that's very important because just being able to build a simple HTML website is not, most places, you're not going to do that. They'll be expecting you to get data from a database, and so you need to be comfortable with that. But for a portfolio, I would say 3 to 5. That's what I've been telling people. And the way I broke down in my Slack channel, I have like a small Slack where we kind of discuss what you should do for a portfolio. I broke it down like this. Number one is showcasing your HTML and CSS skills. So someone should be able to get like a Figma mockup or a Photoshop file, or just take some screenshots of a website that you like, and you should be able to recreate it with HTML and CSS. You don't have to do it crazy, but it should look exactly like the website that you see in the picture. Number two, it's take JavaScript and add behavior to that HTML and CSS project, like basic form validation, little pop-ups, little buttons, and then don't go crazy, but find an API where you're pulling some data to render in that project. And that's kind of like your first step. Get comfortable with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And then I tell people, take that same project and now recreate it with React. So you could kind of understand things that JavaScript does. And then when you do with React, like, oh, React makes it much simpler. And wow, I really like React. But you could kind of see, the context between the two, And then after that, that's when I tell. So you have the 2 little projects. One is your basic HTML, CSS, JavaScript uh, project. Second is your same project, but done with React. Maybe add a blog element to it. But the third project is the big project. It could be something like the bug tracker that Coder Foundry talks about. I'm working on a invoice tracker where basically you could manage all the projects you're working on for clients. You could manage your timesheets, how much you're charging everybody, and then at the end you could send an invoice. You could log in to see your invoices. Somebody else could be another user that could log in, see their invoices that they're doing. So you need something that talks about authentication, managing users, and this idea that certain users should like see certain data and not the other. So if it's, let's say, my data, I should only be the one that's able to delete it or edit it versus somebody else, and like stuff like that. I think it's important to be able to do that. And you don't have to like be the greatest master, but you do have to understand that. At least that's kind of like what I gathered from my experience, because the first job that I got outside of WordPress, that's exactly what they were asking me to do. You know what
Mm,
I mean? Like
yeah.
being able to, you know, create views where if certain users not authenticated, they don't get to see certain information. If they are authenticated, they should only be the ones to edit. And you don't want that to be a surprise when you start working. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I didn't think about it this way because originally my idea was have your portfolio site up and then at least have just one really good project like a bug tracker project.
that
But I didn't
works.
think about this like intermediary steps of like the HTML, CSS part, and then like kind of transitioning to that React and then whatever. But do you showcase those HTML and CSS and React mini projects before you do that final project? Or are you like
Yeah, so
just
my Slack,
showcasing?
that so I'm actually like, I try to like, not be one of those people that talks about stuff and then doesn't do it. So I actually working and creating that project with the students. I'm not
Mhm.
showing them how to do it. If someone asks me how to do it, I tell them to find resources and figure it out. Like I don't want it to be where they copy what I do. I have my code as
Exactly.
reference,
Hmm.
but I want you to do the work. And like coming back to your point, if you have a portfolio website and you have like a significant project like a bug tracker, I think that's good enough if it's complex enough.
Mm,
But teaching students, I found out I can't be like, let's build a bug tracker. And
right.
that's why I created those intermediate steps, which ease you into developing more of that complex project. And depending where you're on your journey, you could kind of start, oh, I don't know HTML, CSS. We'll start here. Oh, I don't know React. We'll start here. I know React, but I haven't worked with APIs yet. We'll start here. And so that's kind of like what I've been doing, kind of like the way I thought about it was like, if I were to do this all over again and have three projects or three steps that take me from beginner to job ready, that's kind of what I came up with. And I'm sure there's like many different ways. And like another thing I would add to that, just because of just working with React, is um, do that for projects, but also have mini projects, which you're not doing random stuff, but you're just building like React components. Maybe you're going to have like a post component. Maybe you're going to have like some toggler component. Maybe you're going to have some sort of drop down menu. Like start kind of creating your own, like, what are the front end library frameworks, create your own. And you could add it in your portfolio, not like as the main thing, but kind of showcase that that's what you're doing. So my process has been, now it's like if I'm working on a big project, I'll go into like CodePen, and I like CodePen just to try ideas, and I like that it's limited, that you can't build like a huge thing in there, just to try some things out. So I'll do like a little table component for my React application. I'll be like, oh, cool, I got the idea, and then I'll move it to my project, and then I'll build on it from there. But I think it's important to learn to build the building blocks that you use to construct your bigger project.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's actually really. Do you actually teach them the HTML, CSS, or you just say build this, and then how you come up and learn it is up to you, kind of
So I
thing?
tell them build this, and then
Mhm.
for my Slack channel users, I'll show them resources. We all share
Mhm.
resources in the Slack, and then I'll tell them, listen, if you get stuck, like try it on your own, ask people in Slack on your own. But if you're really stuck, you could do a call with me, and then I'll do a call with them, and then I'll help them out. But if they call me and they have an empty project, I'm gonna hang up and be like, listen, like I'm doing this for free. You know what? Like if you're not putting in effort, like I had a friend on Slack who sent me his get like thing, like repo. He had every day had some sort of commit. He's been putting code every day. And then when he asked me a question, I'm like, of course I'm going to answer your question. Let's jump
Right.
on a phone call. I talked to
Right.
him for 3 hours. Why? Because he put in that effort. And I had like a girl from Germany that really nice. I'm so amazed how much she's learning and how much she's doing. And then when she had a question, I'm like, let's jump on the call right now. Like, I don't mind helping people that put in the effort. But if
Yeah.
you're like showing up with good ideas but empty hands, I'm gonna tell you to, come back at another time, because like, yeah, my time, I'm giving it to you for free. But if you're not willing to put an effort, I don't want to talk to you at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
and that's and
yeah.
it honestly, that's there's nothing wrong with what you just said as someone that's giving your time up, helping these people build projects and you're giving proper guidance. And this kind of relates to what I was kind of been thinking this past weekend is even when you're gonna ask a question and you're asking a question to someone that has more experience and you tell them what you've done so far, not just I don't know what I'm doing, like literally I haven't done anything to figure this out.
Yeah,
I'm just like at least explain your mistakes, right? Tell us what you've done to get to try to at least solve the problem, not just hey, you have more experience than I do. Can you just figure this out for me? Like that's not what being a software developer is all about. You have to be a problem solver.
yeah,
And if your natural intuition or natural like your first thing that you're going to do is just give up and ask for help, then you're going to be very very hard to hire cuz not every developer has a lot of responsibilities and not everyone's going to just stop doing what they're doing just for you, right? So you
right.
got to be able to learn how to adapt, learn how to Google, learn how to solve the problems, learn how to yeah, I mean Google is like literally has a lot of answers that you can ask the questions for. So
Pretty much
definitely
everything.
do that first.
If
Yeah.
you could, like, you just have to read a little bit, decipher a little bit. Um, but there's a funny link. I forgot what it is, but it's basically if someone asks you a question, you send them that link with the question that they ask, and it'll basically pull up Google pre-filled with the question they ask. Just be like, bro, you didn't even try. But that's why I feel like I definitely differentiate myself from like what other people are doing is that I provide a structure or community, I guess, where people are struggling through the problems themselves. And if they're willing to do the work, they have somebody that will help them. And of
Mhm.
course, if you're not willing to do the work, you're not going to get anywhere. And that's it, what it is. And what I wanted to say, like, in terms of like courses or boot camps, like Udemy, whatever, like a lot of people, like one of my most successful videos is like best Udemy course for web development. And it's kind of like a joke because I show in that video that I have 1,000 courses and I just recommend just do three and understand what you learned.
Right.
And like, and that's what people don't understand. It's not the course. It's not the $12 you spend on Udemy or $15,000 you spend on a boot camp. It's did you apply yourself in that boot camp? Did you apply yourself in that course? And I'll give you one example because it was pretty funny. So I used to teach Brazilian Jiu Jitsu uh, and I used to work in Norwalk, and it's pretty like nice area because we're close to Greenwich and stuff. And so like it's very easy to get people paying $150 for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu lessons. And so like I do a lot of privates, and people would come in and they would assume just because they were paying $150 for a private lesson, the fact that they're showing up, they're gonna automatically become world class Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu person. And so like I had people that would come for years, pay an obscene amount of money and still suck at jujitsu because they're not applying themselves. Where I would
Mhm.
have people come in and they would come do a class with me, and they'll be like, all right, like I'm gonna like do this week, this week, and next week, and then I'll come back, and then we could tighten up what I've learned prior week. Like they actively participate in their learning. And I think that's very important. And when I used to teach, like I hated doing private lessons just because, yeah, it's a lot of money, but it's still like if you have like four lessons in a day, that's already 4 hours that you have to do. So you can't scale that. So I always enjoy doing group classes. So I used to tell like people in my private classes, like, listen, like if you come like want to come into a second class and you don't practice the stuff that I taught before, like don't even bother scheduling time. Like,
Right.
yeah, I'm saying no for money. Like if I really hated you, I'll be like, yes, definitely come back tomorrow, next week. Yeah, we'll take your money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But all joking aside, you need to participate in your learning 100%. It's
Right. And that kind of relates to this one-on-one tutoring thing that I was thinking about where people ask me, "Do you do one-on-one tutoring, not coaching, but tutoring?" And I was like, "Dude, like like doing tutoring with me, yeah, we could like solve a problem together, but at the end of the day, to your point, if you're not going to go to the classes or do the actual work outside of our this 1 hour session, this really is pointless. And if I was
yeah,
just doing it straight for the money, then of course, I would just be like, "Yeah, I come every day or come
yeah.
every week." It is what it is, but you have to kind of be able to solve it on your own, and there's
Yeah.
no other way around it
Yeah, and
because
if people like going for you for tutoring, like to solve a problem, it's almost like consultation. That
yeah.
they're just trying to see how you would solve it, and like tutoring, like the reason I do tutoring for free because I come from the world of teaching martial arts. I used to easily get $150 an hour, teaching Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and so like I'll give you my time for free. But if you want to pay me, my rate is going to be like $150,
Mhm,
$100 an hour. It's going to be
mhm.
something that you won't be able to afford. So because I don't want people that are going to be flaky. They're coming
Yeah,
in, and if I do some sort of like affordable tutoring, the only reason it's going to be affordable because I'm going to use power of scaling with online lessons that I pre-recorded, and maybe I'll do like monthly calls to answer general questions. That's the only way it works, because as a developer, like for you yourself, regardless, like eventually you're going to work long enough that your time an hour is going to be worth a lot, and you can't
exactly.
just you know undermine and undersell yourself, when you're doing tutoring. So yeah, it's
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I think we're in a good place in a sense that yeah, we could make some money off these one-on-one sessions, but realistically, to really help as many people as we can with
yeah.
this journey, we have to come up with a more like scalable way. And speaking of scalable way,
That's why we're on YouTube.
let's talk about your coding channel, your YouTube channel,
Oh
man.
my
Coding
gosh.
After 30. What a
Yeah,
great
yeah,
name.
yeah. So
What a
here's
great
the
name.
funny thing. Like, I don't know if you saw my last live stream. I saw like I don't get bothered, but like it was hilarious to me when like Kevin goes to me like, Paul, you're like 40 years old. You're blatantly lying, and I wanted to be like, Kevin,
That's not
be-
true.
before I smack you. I love Kevin, but the point is, it's like the channel is not about me being 40. I could be 50. I don't care. Like the point of the channel is that I was in my mid 30s when I decided to switch careers. This has been my journey. And I'm not created a channel to know how old you are. Like I created a channel for a specific demographic. If you're
Right,
in your
right.
mid 30s, I want you to come to my channel. That's why I'll never change my name, because it's not where I am right now, a software engineer. It doesn't help anybody. My channel is
Yeah.
about where was I when I was 35 in my mid 30s, struggling, trying to switch careers, and that's what it's all about. So I was like, "What the hell these guys talking about?" Of course I'm joking. I have like thick skin. I that takes a lot to like make me upset, but and I like trolling people. I'm admitting it to it right now. Like don't hurt me. I have a like I don't troll bad. Like I'm not a bully, but I like engaging with trolls, I guess I should say. So I have a separate account on YouTube where I like to troll people, like answer trolls, because it's entertaining. Um, you know, but look, if you're a troll, you're gonna come to my channel. As much as I love to have talk to you, like I'm gonna ban you because it's not good for my viewers. But I
Exactly,
but I do enjoy it,
exactly.
so
Yeah.
like I totally get the whole YouTube thing, and like I tell people, like if you hate like the Logan Paul brothers, that's because you don't understand how YouTube works. You know what I mean? Like
Right,
they might be jerk. Like I bet in real life, like at least maybe one of them is like really really nice. But like the point is, like they know what gets attention, and
right.
that's like the whole thing with like YouTube.
Yeah,
It's
we need more YouTube drama within this coding space. That way we could kinda
Yeah, yeah,
get that, viewership up
exactly.
a little bit,
I
you know
I
what I mean?
I think like we should do like like a boxing match, and like but
Why
no,
are
but
we doing something that you're good at? Like,
no, 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 no. Hold on a second.
what are
Listen
we
to me. No, 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 no. Like, listen. No, no. If we, the whole point would be like we'll talk shit to each other. We'll like build up this big build up, and then we'll hype it up like crazy, get everybody excited, but we'll never fight. The whole point is just going to be a build up for the rest of our lives, and then just drama, 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 like as if you're gonna fight, and then we'll have like close, and then something weird would happen and would never happen, and so
I think the
it's just
fight could be worth it if it's, people are willing to pay for it, you know? We'll just hype it up for, like, 5 years,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then at that point, we've
And listen,
generated so much,
yeah,
you know? It could
and
just be
when
worth it, 50
and
50
when you
split.
do the fight, you do like amateur rules, and you could literally be
Exactly.
like, "Oh, not allowed to
Headgear.
punch to the face. You're not
Yeah,
allowed to punch hard." Like I
yeah,
had it could be an exhibition match. So I had an
exactly.
exhibition match a while ago, and so like the point is, you can't hurt your opponent. So we
Right.
basically did light sparring, and that's what we do. It's like it was fun. The crowd loved it though because they had no idea. They were
I
like,
guess
"Oh
we
my
got our
god, they're
million
trying to
dollar
kill each
idea.
other." Yeah,
I guess we got our
uh, it's,
$1,000,000 idea.
yeah,
But no, I honest in all honesty though, your channel called Coding After 30, I think it's a great name, first of all, because I get these questions a lot, like, "Am I too old to code?" Right? How many times have you heard that question?
I've been asking it for 10 years.
Yeah, exactly, and it's just so it's such a open-ended question, you know, it really I think it's just really up to the individual, so,
Yeah,
you know, it's your that own person is telling yourself that you have your doubts, that you can't do this. You're coming up with reasons why you can't do it.
yeah,
But for me, coding is one of those opportunities where I'm not sure if everyone can be a software engineer,
Yeah,
but you
100%
have
true.
the most opportunity to become one, and it's free. There's no like you
Yeah,
don't have to go to medical school to
yeah,
be
the
like
barrier
a
to entry
doctor. You
is
don't have to
like
go to
very
dental
easy.
school. There's it's literally is everything is open source by nature. So you have all the opportunities to become one. And when someone asks, "Am I too old to code?" and you're maybe if you ask like, "Am I too old to be a doctor?" where it requires like 10 to 15 years of schooling, maybe you are, right? But with
Yeah,
code, you can become a software engineer in like potentially a year,
yeah.
maybe 3 years. Like it's not like you're giving up your whole life to become one. And that's why I really love your channel name. But I mean, I know you said who your target audiences were, but like, did you have that mindset in mind as well?
So I wanted to, yeah, like I mean, when I started the channel, like I do have a little bit of marketing background. Like I wanted it to be like no, like I wanted to be like almost like black and white that when people see my name and finally oddly enough figuring out like coming out with coding after 30 like was a pain like there's so many name iterations. I used to be called like coding with Paul and a bunch of other weird names. But it's like you know where you fall into that like
Mm,
like a Unity game designer is not going to come to my channel and be like,
right.
yeah, like it's very self-selecting, and I think I much rather have smaller group of followers that are exactly in the demographic that I'm looking for versus make it like for everyone. And based on like my viewers, like pretty much everybody, majority, like 80% of my viewers fall into that mid 30s range, which is kind of awesome. So like I know it's working. In terms of learning to code, I kind of want to add that there's definitely like difficulties the older you get. And so definitely want to be realistic with your expectations of what kind of job you're going to have, what you're going to do. And in some cases, like for instance, I went through a divorce, I was single, my daughter was older, and so like I didn't have certain responsibilities somebody else might have with their family. So if you have a job, let's say where you're making $80,000, but you just hate it, switching to coding, it's a tough ask from the standpoint that you have a family that relies on you, and you're not guaranteed to start making 80,000. You might have to pay your dues. Maybe you'll make 50,000, 60,000, 70,000. And it's that financial risk worth it for you to take when switching careers. And so like it's definitely like you got to take into account your family situation, your responsibility situation, and also setting realistic expectations. Like when I wanted to become a developer, my goal was not to work at Google. My goal is just to work as a developer and be like, like not like average, but like I definitely want to be the best developer I can be. But like people like, I want to make 200,000 K. I'm like, I'll be happy with 100. You know what I mean?
Right.
90, like eventually, like not even to start with. Like, and if I don't make 100, like, and I make 80, like whatever, like I'll be fine too. Like, and so the, I just wanted to get into the field and do it rather than this idea of like making bajillion dollars. And if somebody wants to make bajillion dollars, like, yeah, you could do it as a developer, but uh, you to make that much money, you have to have a business. You know what I mean? It's like, so if you want to be super duper rich, start a business, solve a big problem. But as a developer, you're gonna have a comfortable job, and that's kind of like, I'm good enough. Like happy to be here. I'm gonna
Right.
make my millions on the YouTube channel. That's why I do YouTube.
So I was gonna ask what your main motivation was to be a millionaire on YouTube.
Uh,
Just kidding.
yeah,
I'm
exactly.
kidding,
I
I'm
want
kidding.
to, no, really, that's what I want to do is I want to make more money on YouTube than I do at my job.
That would
So
be awesome.
one of the things, like one of the craziest lessons I learned, like I used to work like with these crazy people, and this one guy where I got my entrepreneurial like kind of itch from, uh, because like I had no choice. I had to put up with him for like the longest time because he was my business partner when we had the martial arts school. He goes to me like, "Why do people work?" I'm like, "What a random question." "To make money." He's like, "Yeah, for what?" I'm like, "To pay their bills." And he looks at me and he like in disappointment. And I'm like, "What?" Like, and I was young at the time. And he
Mhm,
looks at me, he's like, "Do you know why people have jobs?" I'm like, "Why?" Now I'm like curious. And he goes, "To make money to fuel their business and their like investments."
mm,
So his idea, you make money to be able to create something to make more money. It's not to pay your initial bills and your lifestyle. It,
right.
and that's how he thinks. He is a pure entrepreneur, terrible manager, but pure entrepreneur that his job is a way to basically float his business endeavors. And so, like, and I was like, that's brilliant, because that way you never feel stagnant, because you understand, like, the reason you work, the reason I'm a developer is to make enough money so I could create my business, do this
Right.
extra thing and stuff like that. Is it a lifestyle for everybody? But I think it's like important for people to kind of, think in ways like that, where you don't just work to accomplish that immediate task of having a lifestyle. It's nothing wrong with that, but I think you constantly have to think about, what could I do to, like, make myself better. And, like, I'll use an example. Let's say you don't want to start a business. If I'm a developer and I'm working somewhere, part of that money I'm going to reinvest back into my education, so I could guarantee myself, like, raising up in the ranks in the company and trying to get the highest paid position in the company that I can before leaving. So a lot of people, like, they'll make money, and once they make it, they hoard it, which is fine, or they spend it, even worse. But I think people have to reinvest in their own education and in their own development to grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you've kind of touched on a lot of different things. I think the first thing I wanted to talk about was the yes, everyone has an opportunity to code, but everyone's family situation or whatever situation they're in can be really different. And that's another thing where I even talked about this maybe a longer time ago in my older videos, where I say, hey, I had an opportunity to go to a coding boot camp, but I also had the privilege to go to a coding boot camp because
Right.
I didn't have kids to worry about. I saved enough money for myself and only myself to worry about. And I was able to just pack my bags from Austin and move to New York. Didn't have any other responsibilities. So I could be able to commit that kind of time. But it's really good that you do give that caution that if you're making 80, 90K, and then suddenly you do potentially a coding boot camp where you have like an income share agreement on top of that, and you are paying potentially 15 to 30K, and then you're also not working during that time, so you're also racking up credit card debts. There's a lot of inherent risks to
Yeah.
uh like even with coding boot camps or just deciding to become a software developer. Everything is opportunity cost, and money that you're not making there could have been investments for to grow more money somewhere else. So I think it's really good that you did mention that. And the thing about the entrepreneur thing, I think it's not for everyone for
No.
sure, but it's also good to just see that other side of the coin a little bit and see
Yeah.
if that's something that you'd ever be interested in. So it's really cool to get that kind of feedback from what your vision is. And I think as your channel is growing, it's gonna really I think that's gonna really bear fruit because obviously right now I think
Yeah.
we're kind of in a similar situation
Yeah.
in the sense that we have around the same subscribers. Our watch hours aren't even monetized yet. So, but we'll
Oh
get
my God.
there. We'll
We'll
get
get
there.
there. We'll
We
get
could,
there. Yeah.
yeah, we'll grow our businesses outside of does not just the YouTube
Dude,
channel, but it is what it is.
we
Yeah,
should do 24-hour streams. Get that
24
watch
hours
time
a week.
up. Get that. Oh my
Just
God, you
leave it
got
on.
4,000 hours of watch time. Jesus Christ. This is great.
Yeah, but Paul, before I close out, I just have maybe just like one final question. I like to say it's like my closing theme or my final question. But for you, I wanted to ask, like, what do you think is missing in a lot of aspiring developers that's preventing them from landing that first job?
I think it's the combination of fear of failure and imposter syndrome, of feeling like you don't know enough, and so you never try to put yourself out there, and so you just keep doing courses, keep saying, like, I need to
Mm,
learn more. And to me, it's like a weird, like, way to procrastinate and avoid confronting your fear of rejection. And so you just need to get out there and g- like, start failing, and
yeah,
then create that feedback loop that we talked about. Ask, why did I not get hired? What was the problem? And then focus on fixing that one problem. And a lot of people try to fix everything. Like, another great advice I got from someone, they said, like, imagine you have, everybody has problems, but one problem is going to be slightly bigger than the other. So just focus on that big problem that's preventing 80% of the time of you succeeding, and knock it down, fix it, and then do, like, one thing at a time. But I think that's the hardest part, is dealing with rejection, being afraid to commit because nobody wants to be told no, to you're not
mm,
good enough, you can't do it. But that's part of getting hired. And I will tell you this, I know, for me, going to interviews is stressful, and I know for you, going to interviews is stressful. And my friend, who's that genius guy who has photo graphic memory. He told me when he now goes to interviews, he still stresses about them. It's a normal process. You're never gonna feel like you're just gonna ace it. And he even told me, he's like, I have to prepare for them too, you know, to this day. And so that, I would say, is the number one thing. Is by the way, before I go, I want to tell you I figured out your superpower. Uh, you know, outside of your soothing voice,
What is it?
is the ability to listen. I think you're going to go really far with your interviewing. I was going to say I like this format. I was kind of jealous that you came up with it first. Interviewing developers, I was like, yeah, the mother, okay, all right. But the reason, like, because I watch, when I can, and you're really good at being attentive, paying attention to what your guests are saying, and then you reiterate it to your viewers. And what I like, that not only because you're kind of summing up the point for your viewers, but you're also giving a chance to your listener to be like, oh my God, he's actually listened to me. This guy's amazing. But more importantly, if there's something that I want to add to that, you're giving that opportunity. I think you're doing like an amazing job. And like, it's a good skill to have. Like, I'm don't want to say that I'm a good listener, but it's a very important skill. And doesn't matter, like, if you're in development, if in your family life, or interviewing like this, definitely everybody should become a good listener. It will save you years in your relationships. That's my pro advice. But yeah, I was gonna say, like, because um like I could tell you go out of your way to do it. And I appreciate it, because like a lot of people like talking about me, 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 what I could do, how I'm the greatest. And you like have this great balance of adding points, but at the same time, you know, like you're actively listening. And so like I like that, because it makes me want to come back and do more of these interviews. And it shows like respect to your guests. And
Yeah.
there's lots of people that just go through the motion. And then when you finish talking, they'll be like, "Oh, what did he say?" Like, I'm not sure, because they just want to act and
On to the
pretend.
next
So yeah,
question.
exactly, right, exactly. So I really appreciate it. I just wanted to say, like, you're doing a fine job on this fine channel with your fine interviewing skills.
Thank
So
you. I mean, I really appreciate that. And something I've had to learn how to do better, because when you're having a conversation with someone in real life, you want to acknowledge what they're saying. And so while they're talking, you're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But then I realized that when you're listening to it on like a podcast style, you don't want people keep interrupting each other while they're
right,
talking. So a lot of times I've been, this is still a learning process for me where I just need to stay quiet and just really, really listen. And there's nothing else I'm could to be doing since I'm not talking. I'm actively listening. And I really want to make sure I understand what you're saying. And I want to make sure my audience is understanding what you're saying, because I personally feel that not, well, you're kind of have a YouTube channel and you have a presence, but int- my intention with this series was not just interviewing uh, like coding YouTubers,
yeah,
but
yeah, like
I
regular
wanted
people, like developers, like it
exactly like
sounds like yeah,
yeah, because it's surprisingly enough, like a lot of people feel like they have no value to add. Even
right,
software developers, they just say,
yeah,
"Well, all I do is code. I don't really have anything
yeah,
else."
yeah,
But when
yeah,
you actually start talking to them
yeah. It's like
and hearing their journey,
mounts. Yeah, it's
it's
amazing.
insane how
Yeah,
much the stuff that they had to go through, the trials and tribulations they had to go through to become what they are now. Like I talked to a woman named Valerie who said it took her about like 5 to 6 years or something like that to become a software developer. It's just kind of similar to your story. And it's
yeah,
not just like, yeah, it's so cool to hear those 3 months I became a or I became a coding software developer and all of those things. But in reality, those are kind of anomalies, right?
yeah,
So it's just good to see how everyone got to where they are. And I just feel that no one story can never represent what it's like to be a software engineer or maybe anything in
yeah.
life. So I wanted to share that and create a platform where people can do that. So
Yeah,
I really appreciate that
yeah,
too.
no,
So
it's awesome. Like I said, it really made me so angry. I was like, God, the mother, like, seriously, like, why does he have good ideas first? But then, like, I listen to your, I'm like, man, and he's a good listener, and he pays attention, and he sounds good. Like, I think, like definitely keep up with it. I think,
yeah,
like, having a consistent schedule of release date to like have people kind of have something to kind of wait to and set that expectation will be really nice. But I definitely see you going far with this kind of podcasting idea. Like, we're
right.
gonna have a rivalry in our podcasting too. I just have to come up with a good scheme for my podcast outside of this free
I was
talking thing
actually
that I do.
gonna bring up a really good idea based on our conversations, but I'll save it for our offline conversation
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
it could
Sounds good.
potentially make you $1 billion. We'll see.
Yes, $1 billion, a bajillion. I
We're
wanna
just gonna
if I'm
CPM.
not making bajillion dollars. No, I think so. I think so.
But
But
no, thank you, Paul, for coming on. But actually, I do want to ask you one last thing: is if anyone wants to contact you, or if there are any social links that you want to share, please feel
yeah,
free to
just
do it
go
right
to
now.
like Coding After 30 YouTube channel. That's the best way to consume my content. And then if you want to join our Discord, you could go to codingafter30.com, and there's a link that shows how to get to my Discord channel. I'm still working on that website, so it's kind of doesn't have that much content, but it does have the link. And you could always email me, but I'm not gonna give it to you here unless you ask me at my channel or Discord, because I don't want trolls to contact me. No, make me. I'm just kidding. I make people do the work though. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I
like
mean, it's always good to see who's
I'll
actually genuinely interested and
yeah,
wants to talk to you. So it's good
right.
to
I'm
do
gonna
that.
say it's very difficult. It's my like name Coding After 30 at some sort of email
Yeah.
service. Like you know, I'll
It's
tell you
Gmail,
like
guys. It's
right,
Gmail.
exactly. It's Gmail, exactly. No, but yeah, my email codingafter30 at gmail.com. You could send me any questions there, not a problem. But I want to
Sounds
thank you for
good.
your time, dude. I really appreciate it. I know you're a busy man. Like you're trying to conquer YouTube and work at Amazon. It's bro, you made it big. Look at this. A celebrity in the midst of like us little people.
Man, you are totally ruining the mood of this episode. This is supposed to be all about you, not about me. So let's just end it there. But no, honestly, very fun to have you on. And I
Yeah,
really
great talking.
appreciate you just kind of taking your time. I know I just messaged you last minute. So it's really good to be able to actually make an episode like this. And definitely we'll post this because I think a lot of people will find value from you and just like from your channel actually. So definitely check out Paul's channel, Coding After 30, if you're looking for resume tips, if you want to build projects starting from scratch with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React, and then a full stack application. Go to his channel. It really is resourceful. He also streams every Saturday. Is
Yeah,
that
every
right?
Saturday, 6 Central
6
time,
Central.
because I'm back in Austin now. So yeah,
Cool.
it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Crazy. Sometimes it gets ridiculous, but yeah, thanks
Yeah,
again for your
it's
time.
really fun, and
You know,
I'm always either watching or I'm on it. So let's
yeah, yeah,
I definitely watch every week. So it's yeah, it's really exciting, and I can't wait
yeah.
to see how big your channel grows.
Hey,
So
same here, same here. We're gonna grow together, 100%.
definitely,
And then
definitely.
we'll do that fight that we talked about. I
And
mean,
for
I
everyone
mean,
else that's still here, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.
thanks a lot.